What if I told you that Ferrari made a technical decision that can decide whether to compete for the title in 2025 or leave everything to focus on 2026? What happened in Mugello changes everything, but nobody has told you complete. Until now. In what seemed to be just another technical routine day in Ferrari's internal calendar, on July 16th and 17th in Mugello, it became one of the most tense and decisive moments for the Italian team throughout the 2025 season. Under the administrative coverage of a simple filming day, the House of Maranello orchestrated an essay of very high technical and emotional burden implications for the next careers, but could completely alter the address of the development of the SF25 and even condition the 2026 program. Mugello was not randomly chosen. It is one of the most complex circuits in the world. Long curves, sudden slope changes, braking in descent and high-speed sections that punish both aerodynamics and car mechanics. If there is a place where you can detect the most subtle weaknesses of a technical package, it is there. But this private test was not designed as progressive validation. It was raised as a binary test, either it works or cancelled. All or nothing. Ferrari brought a completely new combination of flat background and rear suspension to track. This set, devised by the engineer Leclerc, is not a simple evolution of the previous version of the SF25. It is a conceptual reconfiguration that seeks to restructure the foundations of the dynamic behavior of the car. The problem that Ferrari drags since 2024, and that failed to solve in the pre-season tests or in the first races, is the extreme sensitivity to the ride height. This means that small changes in car height with respect to the ground disproportionately affect aerodynamic balance, especially in high-speed curves. It is an Achilles heel that prevents attacking pianos, punishes the constancy in a rhythm, and makes each configuration adjustment have unpredictable consequences. In Mugello, Ferrari not only tested a technical solution. He put into play the validation of his development strategy, confidence in his new team of engineers, and the ability of his pilots to interpret and integrate real-time sensations with simulated data. Both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were key on this mission. It was not enough for telemetry to say the car was faster. Their comments, impressions, and cross-comparison were vital to decide whether this package would debut in SPA or if the team would take a definitive rudder towards the 2026 car. Each return in Mugello was a technical and political message at the same time. The tension between innovation and risk was palpable. A structural failure, an unexpected vibration, a discrepancy between the simulated and the real could crumble months of work. And at the same time, if the results were positive, they represented a trusted injection that could revitalize the current project. In this context, Mugello was more than a test. It was a crossroads that will define whether Ferrari fights for something in 2025 or begins to prepare, in silence, to be reborn in 2026. During the 2 days of private tests in Mugello, Ferrari not only rolled with cameras and drone in search of spectacular shots for their social networks. What was taken to track was a battery of technical modifications that can redefine the architecture of the SF25. These pieces were not there to show off. They were even components without homologation, brought urgently from the design department, with the mission of solving the greatest obstacle of the car: their inability to maintain a stable and low height without sacrificing the bottom of the car. This problem, in F1 engineering, is known as critical sensitivity to the ride height. And solving it is not a matter of turning a screw. The first radical change focused on the pull rod rear suspension, a design that Ferrari has maintained but this time was completely redesigned by Leclerc and his team. The upper arm was advanced and lowered, a decision that completely alters the suspension geometry. The objective: modify the cinematics of the system to induce anti-quat behavior. This, translated into track language, means that the car should avoid sinking excessively during acceleration. By maintaining the rear more stable, the diffuser of the aerodynamic collapse is protected and the risk of damaging the flat bottom is reduced. But here is the risk. When altering geometry, the anchors to the housing of the gearbox now face load levels never previously experienced. A single microfissura at that point and the complete test becomes failure. At the same time, Ferrari tested a new version of the flat background, internally baptized as Spec Austria B. This background introduced a rented central channel and an external edge of the highest diffuser. The idea behind this modification is to gain aerodynamic efficiency in fast curves without saturating the escape edge, which improves stability in transition and reduces rear turbulence. It is not a superficial change. Its effectiveness depends completely on the rear suspension managed to keep the car in a precise operating window. In other words, if the new suspension does not control the height well, this fun simply does not yield. and its theoretical benefits calculated in no more than 0.04 seconds per lap disappear completely. The third experimental component was a new hydraulic adjustment in the assisted direction. It may seem lower compared, but this adjustment is key. When redesigning the rear suspension and modifying the rigidity of the background, the balance of the car changes deeply. In order for pilots to get the most out of that new balance, it is necessary for the address to transmit that change with precision and linearity, especially in high-speed curves where the minimum error can cost tenths or even cause an error. The address must not only answer, but to do it progressively and consistently with what the car is doing behind. This is an adjustment that cannot be measured with sensors. Only the pilot can judge its effectiveness. And for that, the subjective feedback of Leclerc and Hamilton became as crucial as any number on screen. Together, this technical package represents a commitment to unlock a more stable aerodynamic platform, less prone to load peaks and more consistent in its performance. Ferrari is not looking for only more aerodynamic load, but a way of making it usable without compromising the durability of the fund or demanding a reactive pilot to the millimeter. The great challenge was to make all these systems work in synergy, because separately they can work. But only if they interact harmoniously, they can transform SF25 into a true contender. What Ferrari put on the track in Mugello was not just a technical experiment. It was an existential test. Each component evaluated carried a background question. Is it worth investing in the SF25 or must it be cut off and start again with the 2026 car? The implications of this essay not only touched the mechanical, but the organizational, the strategic and the political within the team. Because behind each telemetry data, there were personnel decisions, budget allocation and institutional confidence at stake. Mugello represented a critical crossroads for a very specific reason. It was the last viable window to introduce improvements before the Belgian GP in Spa-Francorchamps. If the new technical package worked, Ferrari had the perfect argument to redouble his commitment to project 2025 and continue fighting for victories. But if it failed, the cost of continuing to develop the SF25 for a season in which McLaren and Red Bull already marked the rhythm, it simply was not justified. In fact, the Scuderia itself defined that if they did not see correlation between track and simulator, they would close the SF25 updates program to concentrate exclusively on Project 678, its new generation car with a view to 2026. And this is where technical decisions become deeply human, because it is not just a matter of data. The new package depends on both the perception and feedback of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Both pilots were key to interpret the behavior of the car. If their feelings differ, if one felt confidence in fast curve and the other could not maintain the ideal line, that indicated that the car was not consistent. And without consistency, there is no technical basis on which to build. Thus, trust between pilots and engineers became almost as important as aerodynamics itself. That is, Mugello was also a test for the new order of power in Maranello, where names such as Loic Serra, Frederic Vasseur and Diego Tondi are trying to consolidate a new work philosophy that has not yet given results in the form of constant victories. Ferrari's test in Mugello was not any day in the calendar. Nor was it a simple opportunity to roll the car and film promotional images. It was a surgical operation, executed under pressure, with ramifications that affect not only the immediate performance on the track, but the work philosophy of an entire organization. In each turn that completed Leclerc and Hamilton, years of technical evolution, months of simulations and weeks of internal debate between departments were being evaluated. And each completed return also represented a crossroads. Advance with what is or cut for the healthy and start building the future. The current Formula One does not reward those who doubt. Success cycles are increasingly short and volatile. A poorly executed design at the wrong time can condemn technical ostracism to a team for years. Ferrari knows. He lived it. And that is why this test in Mugello became the most important act of faith since the beginning of the SF25 project. If the correlation between simulator and track is confirmed, the new background and the rear suspension can give the car that stable operation window that needs so much to attack the most demanding circuits of the calendar. But if he does not succeed, Ferrari faces one of those decisions that are not made with a stopwatch in hand, but with strategic vision. Abandon the present to invest in the future. And here is the most interesting paradox. What happened in Mugello will probably never appear in the official summaries of the season, nor will it be reflected in the points of the championship. But it could be, in silence, the moment when Ferrari began to define his true path, or recover competitiveness in 2025 or build a new technical identity for 2026. This test was not just about whether the car was faster. It was if Ferrari is able to build, sustain and execute a long-term vision. A winning vision. Now, I leave a question: would you risk valuable resources in a technical package that is not yet completely reliable? Or would you make the difficult decision to close the SF25 folder and focus completely on 2026? Do you think this type of test should be done with more transparency, or that secrecy is a necessary part of the game in the elite of motoring? I invite you to share your perspective in the comments. I invite you to subscribe, activate notifications,